Hi there, I'm Dr. John, and I'm one of the people who specializes in craniosacral therapy. And I would like to introduce Michael and his mother, Amanda. And Michael has shown some benefits from doing craniosacral therapy. I would just like to have Amanda, maybe you could give us some history on the whole thing, and
Yes.
that'll be fine.
Michael is a very active 5-year-old. In fact, he's ready to go run off and play. And that's actually part of his amazing story, is Michael was not expected to ever walk. He was normal at birth, full term pregnancy. He was 8 pounds 3 ounces, head circumference in the 95th percentile, and high APGAR scores. All the newborn screening came back normal. Everything was just fantastic with him. He started showing some signs of developmental delays around 9 months to 12 months. And he had a rough start at first medical-wise. He had a low-grade fever, and he had a spinal tap, and then he had pneumonia and was in an induced coma for about a week. And so I just assumed that his developmental delays were because of that. And we went to a neurologist right after he turned 1, and to see if there was any insight to the delays. And at that point we were told that he had microcephaly, which is a genetic condition that you're born with, where the head circumference is small. At this point he was 1.5 years old, and his head circumference was below 0 on the growth charts. So somewhere between birth and 1.5 years, he went from the 95th percentile to below 0. And at that point, the neurologist told me that he would never walk, he would never talk, he would never be a functioning human being, that he would not have enough brain activity to know that I was mom, that he'd have continual seizures, he would need to be fed with a feeding tube, and for me just to take him home and love him, that nothing could help him. And that just didn't sit right with me. I knew there had to be something that we could do, and started searching. Had a lot of doors closed on me, and I didn't give up, and I eventually saw an ad in a magazine in Dallas about craniosacral therapy. Didn't have a clue what it was, but I thought, you know, we've tried everything else, let's try this. So I made the appointment, we went in, and 15 minutes into his first appointment, the therapist told me that she could help him. And I thought, okay, finally somebody who's optimistic with this with me. And she explained the cerebrospinal fluid, the way it flows, the craniosacral system, the rhythm. And his rhythm was a very shallow 2, which indicated that the cerebrospinal fluid was not flowing through the spine into the brain the way it was supposed to. And at that point she had asked me if he had ever had any injury to his back. And I had never thought twice about the spinal tap after we had that done. He was 6 weeks old. He was very affected by it. He was stuck at least 6 times in the wrong position. And I didn't know it was the wrong position until, you know, 1.5 years, 2 years later. But her bringing that up really led us to the focal point with Michael, that the damage done to his spine from the spinal tap affected the flow of the cerebrospinal fluid, which affected his brain growth, which led to his microcephalic diagnosis without any genetic reasoning. He was at ease in that first session. She ended up working with him for almost 2 hours, and his body just soaked it up. And the next day, he looked at me straight in the eyes and smiled. And
Whoa.
He was a month shy of being 2, and that was the first time my child had made eye contact with me. And I told my family, I said, I don't know what she did, I don't know what this therapy is, but it did something, because he's in there, he's in his body. And after his second session, he was pulling up to a stand at the furniture and cruising around, and he had never bared weight on his feet. And we've been going once a week since and had nothing but progress. He's walking now and running, and goes up and down the stairs without any problem. He has never had a seizure. He eats fine. He's hasn't had any of the effects of the microcephaly that they expected me to have with him. He does still have some developmental delays, but I just believe that that's from so many years of the brain being deprived. And we were lucky enough to move from Dallas to Florida to get Michael closer to the Institute, and now we are very blessed to have Dr. John working on him. He is making progress like crazy. He's going to kindergarten now. He's learning how to play games on the computer. He'll use some sign language occasionally. He does it more at school than he does at home, and he does a lot more at school than he does at home. His therapist will tell him to pick up the pink piece of the puzzle, and he will pick up the pink piece of the puzzle. And for me, those are amazing feats for him. And just recently, we have found that he has a problem with his white blood count, and he was diagnosed a month ago with neutropenia. And the doctors have told me that depending on the end test results of what they're doing, he might need a series of injections which have some really bad side effects, or they could need a bone marrow transplant. And I talked to Dr. John about those, and I've given him all the test results. He's been working on Michael intensely the past few weeks, and through no medical intervention, the white blood cell count is going up, and it seems to us that the neutropenia is reversing itself.
Go ahead.
And so I'm hoping that we can defeat the neutropenia without any traditional medical intervention and without doing anything invasive to him, and I really believe we're on the right track with doing that.
Well, I'll tell you what I found the first time I saw him, when you brought him in and let me know that he was having all this difficulty with his blood count. What struck me was that he probably was having recurrent infections that were powerful enough to wear out his immune system. And before I knew that he had had a spinal tap, I had my hand down there on that very place, and he got stabbed at least 6 times there. And my hunch is that there was probably a viral infestation in the needle, because a few years back there were a lot of viruses known that would not be killed by steam autoclaving, or by the sterilizer. And I wondered if that was it, so I put my energy and my cranial work into it, craniosacral work into it, and got a clear pathway from where he had received his 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 needlings in the spine, and I got the energy to go up into his head, and after that he started improving his behavior significantly.